Hi there, welcome to Long Distance Review, and on this episode I'm going to look at the new album from Foo Fighters entitled Medicine at Midnight. Foo Fighters are now 26 years into a career, and this will be their 10th studio album. If you're of an age, like myself, you will remember when Dave Grohl was just the drummer for Nirvana, and it was an incredible surprise when he came out with the first two Foo Fighters albums, which were near perfect garage rock, alt rock, grunge albums, and still to this day are absolutely incredible albums. That was a surprise. He was just the drummer from Nirvana. If you're like me, you would also be surprised that Dave Grohl, the drummer for Nirvana, is now the biggest rock superstar on the planet and fronts the biggest rock band, biggest stadium rock band going. If you're not like me, and maybe you're a little bit younger and you know Dave Grohl as the frontman for Foo Fighters, then none of that's surprising to you. This is the new album from Foo Fighters, the superstar rock band fronted by Dave Grohl, the superstar rock superstar. Foo Fighters have basically, throughout their career, have mastered the art of consistency. And not in terms of quality, I mean in terms of the sound and the format of what they put albums out. The first three albums from Foo Fighters, in my opinion, are really, well, the first two are incredible. The first three are all really near perfect alt-rock albums. And after that, they basically turned into a very good singles band. And they've never really changed so much really at all the sound of the Foo Fighters. They've just written more and more sort of diminishing quality alt-rock songs throughout their career. And what has changed for me from the Foo Fighters is they've lost that excitement and energy that they had, that was permeated through those first few albums, and they've just sort of turned into quite a boring band. Apart from the 2011 album, Wasting Light, which was the return to the sort of garage rock sound and had an incredible sound throughout it, and I think that's a brilliant album. Ignore that album, they've just had a sort of straight line down from incredible down to quite boring alt-rock band, which we have now. Which is a shame really, because as a singles band, they're incredible. In the run-up to this album, they announced that they were going to do a 25th anniversary celebration of the first Foo Fighters album, the self-titled album. And the plan was to do this stadium tour and to play all the songs off that album, celebrate all that kind of stuff. Dave Grohl got really nostalgic about the whole thing, and he even bought the old tour van back, and it was all going to be this 2-year sort of period of them playing stadium gigs of their first album. It was a big celebration and a very nostalgic affair. And then obviously COVID came along and messed all that up. So what we then had was a really skewed timeline for Foo Fighters, because this album feels like a wrong album to release. When we were going to get this garage rock a couple of years, we now have this album, which is essentially a classic rock album. But it feels like Foo Fighters should have done this 2-year period of touring the celebration of the first album, and then go on a break, disappear, and come back as this new sound. And instead we've got the 25th postponed anniversary. Still, maybe is it going to happen, who knows, and we've got this album sort of shoved in the middle of it, and it feels kind of out of place. And what we have is not a garage rock band, we have a classic rock band and a classic rock album, very 70s sounding classic rock album, AOR sounding in places. The album itself opens up with the song Making a Fire, which has actually a really nice groove to it, and I really like the soulful backing vocals that are on there. Dave Grohl has this almost Steven Tyler-esque way about him on the verses, and yeah, it's pretty good. It's an okay opener. It's Foo Fighters, isn't it? It's safe. It's a very safe opener. It's Foo Fighters. It's an alt-rock song by the Foo Fighters. The second song on the album and the first single that was released off the album is the song Shame Shame. When I first heard Shame Shame, I was not impressed at all. I didn't really like it, and it's actually really grown on me. I really quite like the looped drum effect that it has on there. I like the way it builds, and yeah, I quite like Shame Shame. I think it's a really decent track, actually. But I'm just starting to wonder if that's because it's just a bit different than other Foo Fighters stuff, so I'm just like, hey, this is different. I don't know. I do quite like it though, and I can't really pinpoint the exact reason why. And the problem that the Foo Fighters have really in their career is that they built a career on being the Foo Fighters. So in essence, when they do try something different, it's very, very tough. And although this album is a little bit different to a lot of the stuff in the back catalogue, it's still quintessentially the Foo Fighters. There's this sort of, there was a word bounded around by Dave Grohl before this album came out, and that word was disco. Now, I think people got that word and ran with it, when I think Dave Grohl really meant that the disco side of it was more on the production element of the album than anything else. And really, if you want to try and find disco on this album, you do have to look hard, and I would not have really found it if it wasn't for the fact I heard this term before the album came out. There is a bit of a disco bass groove on the title track of the album, but really that title track reminds me more of like a 1990s era David Bowie stuff, or some of the choicer cuts off of like King for a Day, Fool for a Lifetime, some of the more groovier, bluesier, jazzier stuff. You get other different stuff on here from Foo Fighters. Maybe you can pinpoint things like Chasing Birds, which again has a more David Bowie style delivery, but is essentially quite a boring, lullaby-esque plodding song that doesn't really go anywhere. When Foo Fighters on this album go, full-on rock, which they can do sometimes, we get songs like No Son of Mine with its Motorhead-esque riff on it, and songs like Holding Poison. But what you do essentially have then is subpar Foo Fighters rock songs. They're not as good as the other Foo Fighters rock songs we've already got. And that's essentially the problem that Foo Fighters have in their career, is they're basically damned if they do and damned if they don't. What I mean is, if they continue writing Foo Fighters alt-rock songs forever and a day, critics will maul them and say they're just writing Foo Fighters stuff, they're doing nothing different, they're just doing the same thing over and over again, but it's not as good as that other stuff. And then if they do try something different, people go, this isn't the Foo Fighters, where's my Monkey Wrench, where's my Everlong? So they are kind of damned if they do and damned if they don't. And in a way, I sympathise for them on that. But that really isn't my problem with this album at all. My problem with the album is it feels like the band are just going through the motions on here. This feels like a very throwaway album. It feels like the band, which they admittedly are just waiting for the live circuit to wake up again so they can go out on tour. They are now a live band. They are a nostalgia, classic rock live band. And this album has basically added maybe one or two songs to their set list. You get a song like Waiting on a War, which you can see them playing live. It's got that great acoustic build, some really sumptuous strings in it, and it'll be a right sing-along, I guess. A song like Holding Poison, which I mentioned earlier, it sounds like a one-by-one off-cut, basically. It's not great, but it's a mid-set filler. It'd be a toilet break for me. But yeah, that's kind of what we get with this album. It's not a disco album. Or even Foo's straying way far from the well-trodden path they've gone on. It's a classic rock album which doesn't really add anything to the Foo Fighters legacy we already have. It's not terrible, and in fact at a 36-minute running time and only 9 tracks, it's quite in and out, and it feels like a bit of a throwaway EP, and you go, but as a sort of out-and-out studio album, you think, is that it? But then I much prefer it to something like the slog that I found Concrete and Gold, or the really poor Sonic Highways album. This is better than that. I'm not saying it's great, I'm saying it's better than that. There are a couple of decent tracks on here. You get songs like Shame Shame, Waiting on a War. Did I say they were a singles band? And actually I really like the closing track, Love Dies Young. It's got this nice little chugging riff that I really enjoyed. So what I actually thought about when I was listening to this album, and what I think about when I think about the Foo Fighters, is you don't really ever meet any die-hard Foo Fighters fans. Maybe they are out there, maybe I just have never met them, but somehow the band pack out stadiums worldwide constantly, and this will continue that, because what I realise is they are a casual band for casual music fans in a way. You won't find a die-hard Foo Fighters fan, you will find someone who goes, yeah, I like the Foo Fighters songs, I like all their singles, yeah, I heard that song on the radio the other day, that was a new Foo Fighters song, I might go see them live. And they'll pack out stadiums on the back of that sort of, that attitude towards them. No one really cares if they release a good or a bad album, people will still go see them live. People who see them live are just the sort of, oh yeah, I like bits of the Foo Fighters, I'll go see them live. Because that's what they are, a live act with a 30-song set list, which is better than most people's set lists. And that won't change with this album. No one will care that this album's not that great. No one will buy this album that much, really. They're not going to have that many die-hard fans going out and buying this album, going, oh, the new Foo Fighters album. Because it's added a couple of radio singles off it, which is added to their set list. And they'll continue to be massive. Dave Grohl will continue to be the nicest man in rock. They will continue to headline festivals. And no one will really notice that they haven't released a decent album in about 10 years now. So yeah, that's my take on Foo Fighters' Medicine at Midnight. Let me know your thoughts on the album, and I'll be back soon with another review. Thanks very much.